Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next installment of Azure Cloud Talk. I'm your host, Alec Harrison, here with Brian. How's it going, Brian?
Fantastic.
I think we talked about a little bit off camera. Conference season is really coming around. I think how are you feeling about conferences, user groups? I think abstracts are due probably at the time of this recording, maybe the Friday we're recording this, if not maybe the Friday after this recording comes out. So how are you feeling?
Yeah, so this has been a really weird year for me. I'm not really sure what I want to talk about next. I'm in this like transition zone of I've talked about all the things I know enough that I'm like maybe this is a year where I am going to only submit like one or two talks, and if they don't get accepted, so be it, because I number one don't have anything else that I have that I feel is talkable, ready to go, that isn't a reset of things I've already done or another version of it. I mean, and obviously things have changed and I could probably revamp and all the things, but yeah, it's just kind of going to be interesting. But yeah, as we're recording this, I think KCDC's talk, CFP closes tonight, and Beer City Code and DevUp, which are kind of on top of each other this year, I think they both close next week. So those are three main ones I go to. Nebraska Code's already closed, and that one's another one I go to typically when I get accepted, which is every once in a while. So those are all done. Of course, in the summer, it just seems like there's a lot of opportunities for conferences. Like you get the really big ones, like NDC Oslo happens in June, and NDC Melbourne happens sometime later. I can't remember. So there's like some really big ones that everybody kind of wants to go to. There's one in Sweden this year that I wanted to apply to, which I forgot to apply to, and that one was I think in June as well, or maybe even earlier. But it just seems like there's a lot of stuff going on from May until. For May until August usually is really busy. Tech Bash actually though is going to be opening up. That one's in November, so that's a little bit different. But yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity there. I'm not really sure if I'll get accepted to a lot of them or any of them or what I'll be going to, but really it is just a really weird place that we're in with conferences in general anyway. So we were talking off camera, Alec, about how you run like all these user groups, and what does that look like, and how do you feel like the state of a user group is right now?
Yeah, so I think we started during COVID, and it's a really weird place because because it was during COVID, we're totally virtual, right? We didn't want to meet in person due to the pandemic, all that sort of stuff. Fast forward to today, now we're kind of in a weird space where a lot of user groups like atrophied and died. I feel like personally, the in-person user groups are kind of attended heavily by the people who have been there for a long time. Like I'm not seeing a lot of fresh college grads, especially I would say in the new user groups that are in the in-person user groups I'm going to, which is kind of concerning, right? Because if your average age of anything keeps going up and up, just the natural law of everything is that it's eventually going to die, right? Like people are going to stop attending, they'll retire, move, whatever. And if your, adoption rate is not greater than the rate of which people are leaving, it's going to eventually fold. Being fully virtual, I feel like we have this weird area because we can just allow people to join and it's not a huge commitment like it would be for in-person. So I think those are two very different things because I do help with an in-person user group. I help with and then run the virtual ones. Very different audiences. I think very different purposes. I've talked to a tech mentor I have. We've discussed potentially even like transitioning to like a Twitch or some sort of like tech show and like dropping the word meetup or user group kind of entirely, because really what we're trying to produce, at least for the virtual ones, is an informational session that you can come in during your lunch hour and learn something that maybe you might be stuck with or connect you with an expert. And there's no real reason why it would have to be potentially a like Teams meeting. We allow people to come off mute and ask questions, but very rarely, I'd say the better presenters have a lot more engagement. And better is maybe the wrong word. It might be the more like marketable thing. For example, like Kubernetes or AI, super hot in every sort of industry right now. those tend to have on average more people attending, which also tends to on average then have more people engaged in asking questions. But I don't know if it'd be a big takeaway from the experience of if we had something like this session we're in right now, and we were going back and forth and people could join in the guest channels like we did, I guess, like I did with Kevin Griffin and Clark Sell, of why couldn't we just host a show like that? Then it's a regularly scheduled program. Maybe we could have more ad hoc stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with Meetup's platform. I think objectively, people don't like it a ton. And it's a weird place for us too, since we're virtual, right? All of your Meetup groups have to be location bound. So, and there's also costs and stuff that go along with this too. But like, if my user group is fully virtual and I want it to be accessible to everybody, why do I need to have it based out of Des Moines, Iowa? And only people in Des Moines, Iowa can then find it.
Yeah, you can still find them. I can still find like Azure user groups. It's just they say, then you're wondering if they want you in person, and it's like, well, I can't talk to the Azure user group that's in North Carolina because I'm in Iowa.
Yeah, and I know some user group founders and runners are very much like this is going to be networking, this is going to be great. One thing that's interesting, I was talking to somebody today, of user groups used to have like you do your user group and then everybody'd meet up at like a bar afterwards and have some like appetizers or have some beers and just like chill and hang out.
Or it was like Tech Bash where you actually were at the bar the whole time anyway.
Yeah.
Not Tech Bash. That's the conference. What was it called? Tech Brew. Jeez Louise.
Tech Brew. There you go. It's like the bar is the friends we made along the way.
Right. But like, it was such a networking event that you couldn't afford to miss it, because not only did you talk about some tech stuff, but that's where when you needed a network, you would go and be like, hey, I need a job. Does anybody here have a job? Right. Or does anybody know anybody who's hiring? Because I need help. And now we don't have that, and everybody's getting laid off. And it's just like, well, LinkedIn is really great to put open to work on my profile, but who really looks at that? Right. Or maybe a few do, but.
Well, and then there's all this like different advice of how you should actually be using open to work. Like, do you say like, if you were laid off, I'm sad to say, like, I no longer work here? Or it's like you have then people in like the HR recruiting field, like, don't make that post. That's the post that gets your most traction. What you want to do is be very concise of, here's the job I'm looking for, here's the location, here's the title, like. And then you have the human emotion, right? Of like, this sucks. Like, I now have to find a job that I didn't want to find. But yeah, to all of that to be said, like, I feel like user groups or meetups for the most part, especially in the US, which I've heard outside the US isn't really a thing, but in the US, I feel like they're kind of decreasing in attendance. And I don't know. I think there's a few different ways we can go about trying to revive them, or maybe turn them into a pivot to something else slightly different.
What might that look like?
Yeah, I don't know if it's then just like a web series, like a show that people can then tune into. Okay. And maybe that means a higher production value, right? Like maybe we use our money from our nonprofit to hire better editors. Maybe we try to get people to have better recording equipment. I had this light in my basement, but I pulled up a light, so I might be lighter than I probably have been in any other episode we've recorded. Do we then get better mics? Maybe we mail the speakers a thank you gift, or mail them. I know LinkedIn Learning does this if you don't want to go to their site. Like, do we mail them recording equipment, like a microphone, so that our production quality is somewhat of the same episode to episode? There's all these ideas I have, but I think it kind of puts the user group or meetup thing on its head, because then you're thinking about it more as a production company and less of like a meetup. Like, there's more intentionality behind it. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for, right? Of, all right, well, if I now have to mail stuff to people, I'm going to need more commitment of then just like, yeah, maybe I'll get to it, or yeah, kind of put me down. And if I can't make it, like, I'm always the backup. But, and not saying any of our speakers or even a majority of them have done that, but just like there can be that higher level of quality. Like maybe we start getting some graphics made, maybe we start doing some stuff like that and trying to get on a regular cadence. Maybe we do it more frequently, because it is it could be a show that we do like weekly, and maybe there's other guests, maybe there's other interviewers. So people who are like, God, I just can't listen to Alec anymore. Maybe another one of our organizers could host it. And that could really help too when we talk like, I don't know, if you want to be an MVP, or if you want to like show that you can facilitate and do stuff like that, other people could potentially get the opportunity. I don't know. These are all ideas I'm throwing out there. So if anybody in the comment has feedback, feel free to let me know why you don't tune into virtual user groups or why you do, or what pieces you'd like to see, or what pieces you feel like you're missing in a community, whether it's tech or not.
Yeah, we're looking for any kind of ideas because one of the things we were talking about, Alec was talking about, he'd met with somebody earlier and realizing there's like 15 or 20 really good speakers right in their backyard, and they're not getting a chance to meet each other. There's no platform for them to actually share their stuff. Like it sounds kind of sucky, but talking to the wall is only good for so long. We need an audience. So like if you have 20 people who are really good speakers, but nobody's going to come to the user group, they're not going to want to present to the user group because, quite frankly, it is a decent amount of work to prepare a talk, to show up and have one or two people there, and it's usually worth it, but it's hard to do it over and over again. So if there's a venue or a thing that you think would work better, where you feel like I would actually pay attention to this or I would actually show up for this, we would love to hear those ideas, because we're in an age now where we can pretty much make things happen as we want to, but we just maybe don't have the right ideas or haven't heard the right, I don't know, the right thing. I was talking to a mentor earlier today, and one of the things that I've been struggling with and that he unlocked for me was essentially I'm like a chess master right now, that I won't make the first move because I can't see the third or fourth or fifth move. So I'm waiting to make my first move. So maybe what we need to do is just get some ideas from you and make that first move to like, hey, let's have this new community or something, and then we see where it goes from there.
Yeah, and I've made the joke with a lot of people that the people I've met in Omaha alone, like Omaha has a lot of great speakers. I have yet to meet somebody in Omaha from Omaha in Omaha. Maybe I said one too many Omahas, but like I was talking
Hey,
about,
Peyton Manning.
yeah, like Arthur Doler is great. Brian Pope. I met them both at KCDC. They're both from Omaha. I lived in Omaha for like 6 to 12 months, just going to my normal user groups, and we just never crossed paths. And there's a handful of people in every city, right? But if your city doesn't have a conference or a place for everybody to converge and talk, how do you ever find out that they're from there? Like, don't necessarily put on their slide, like, I don't always put that I'm Alec Harrison from Omaha, Nebraska. Come talk to me if you're in Omaha and let's build a relationship and chat. And, whereas I think historically that has been a thing. People have gotten together to have beers after work, or just like cross company IT folks getting together to just chat and have some food or hang out. And I feel like that's kind of gone to the wayside, especially with COVID, just because people got used to not doing that. Where with Omaha, I would say our tech market is fairly heavily hybrid or in person. So I feel like the push to get out of your house is definitely being less and less, because a lot of people are out doing stuff because they're forced to an office. So I think that just getting that started again, maybe it's just having that conversation and getting like-minded people together, or trying to corral those great 15 to 20 great speakers, and maybe we build in public. We just get a couple of them together and we'll go to a bar or a restaurant, get some breakfast, lunch or something, and then maybe other people ask to tag along, and we get to a point that we are a community. But maybe it just starts with a couple of weirdos getting together, talk about niche technologies, or just how do you work at a job? Because like that alone,
Right.
who's better to relate than other people working in a similar field or job to you?
How do you actually go to work 5 days in a row without losing your mind?
Exactly. Like talking about the latest and greatest .NET is awesome, or the Kubernetes or whatever, but I make the joke that the majority of apps we build are box arrow cylinder. Like, you don't need the greatest Kubernetes to build a simple web app that supports 10 people.
Especially not with AI now.
Right.
Just use Vercel or some other thing like Replit or whatever it is, and just make your app in about 5 minutes.
Right. Well, then how do you manage that? Like, there's all these things that we could all talk about, like as a group, that how do we battle the AI wave, or how do we stay relevant with AI? I think these are all topics you could talk about. Whereas, when we were talking about, I say the royal we as the tech community because I wasn't around for it, but how do you make the leap from VB to .NET? I'm sure there was people doom and gloom and overly positive back then too, of, man, this is so easy now. Without jQuery, how's anybody going to have a job? Or with jQuery, how's anybody going to have a job? It's so easy to write stuff. And, the work finds a way, right? There's always more work to be had. Companies like to have up into the right stock. So with more efficiencies, hopefully come more stock, which comes to better pay. And hopefully it all works out that way. But might as well talk to some like-minded individuals to get, a
And if
more
nothing
grounded.
else, just to have some really good conversations around the tech and like hear things that you don't hear when you're stuck in your normal job where everybody's doing the same thing.
Right. Well, and I think tech conferences are great of everybody loves their job for a month after every tech conference they go to, assuming they don't get the
It with
conference cred, but
with the yeah, well, everybody gets the conference crud, but with the exception of the person who got sent to the conference by their company and went to the conference only because they had to, but then realized, oh, this is really fun, but then couldn't go to the talks they wanted to go because it didn't wasn't relevant for their job, and then they weren't allowed to use those technologies they learned about anyway, right? But to the point of that, like I guarantee you that even that person going to the conference got some networking or got some experience stories from someone else that they can take that are relevant. So even though you can't use, I heard them talking about the latest, greatest thing that, vertical slice architecture. It's amazing. And our company won't let us do vertical slice architecture. I just feel like my job is horrible now. No, you don't. You found out from them, vertical slice architecture might be really good, but you also heard stories about how it sucked or how it didn't work or how hard it was to learn or why you might not want to implement it. That's the more useful stuff anyway, right? Than the actual, here's how you do vertical slice architecture. It's more like how do you, and I say that one because it's one that I need to get better at and learn more. And it just came to my mind first, right? It could be anything. It could be like the latest, greatest Java technology or something.
well, I think one thing I'll leave everybody with is I heard a quote today that you shouldn't look at conferences as training. You should look at them for three things: awareness of a tool, when to reach for a tool, and access to the experts using the tool. I think those are the best three things. And if you go in with that, you should have a good conference time. Cool.
Tell us
Well,
your worst stories about conferences too. We love to hear them.
yeah,
Your
put
best
them in the
things that ever
description.
happened in the hallway conversation.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for chatting. This was a little bit of a shorter one, but we'll see everybody next week.
Have a
Bye,
great week,
everybody.
everybody. See ya.